All right, welcome back to another episode of Your Platform Podcast. My guest today is Anthony Santiago. For those who don't know, most people won't know that's in my audience, but Anthony and I played college baseball together. We were introduced to each other in 2011 at Mitchell College in New London. Anthony, whose journey is as unique as it is motivating, he played primarily catcher in college, and was signed in 2012 by the Chicago White Sox, and transitioned into a pitcher. So that's not only a dream come true for you, but definitely anyone who picks up a baseball bat and is playing at that level of collegiate. Division 3, Division 2, Division 1. That's a call that anybody at those levels would love to get. So I'm excited to have you on and share your journey and go through some questions about what you experienced, man. So Anthony, really quick, I want you to bring me to speed because my memory's foggy. 2011 is a long time ago, bro. We talking 14 years, right? I get
Yeah,
14 years.
13
That's a long
years or
time
so.
ago.
It's been a while.
And I remember you coming onto campus, and I said, "Oh, hey, I was a senior at the time." You said, "Yeah, I'm a freshman," and I said, "Oh, how old are you? You look a little bit older." You're like, "I'm 21," and I'm, I'm like, "Oh, okay, 21-year-old freshman." And you and everybody that came to that team brought a level of energy that I hadn't seen there. So, bring me through quickly. The Because I think you were in a college beforehand, right? So what? Bring me up to speed there.
Yeah, so coming out of high school, my first school that I went to was Baltimore City Community College. So I was recruited to go there. It was kind of a new program that they were trying to build. Things kind of didn't fall into place, and I wasn't liking the fact that the team wasn't going to shape out the way it was supposed to. So I ended up withdrawing. I left from there. I ended up going to NJCU after for a little bit. Had some other issues there as well. Things just weren't clicking with me and the coach. After that one, I was like, you know what? Like my whole goal was to make it professional. So I
Mm.
was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to skip the college route. I'm gonna go to DR, see if I can sign. So I ended up traveling out to DR for a few months, played out there for a little bit. Things didn't work out the way I wanted to, but I did get some attention and stuff like that. I came back. I went back to school again. So then I ended up going to William Patterson University for a little bit. I went there for a semester. Still hadn't played my first college season yet. After that, I still wanted to try to go the professional route to try to skip going, 3, 4 years of college before signing. So I went back out to DR again. I was out in DR for a while. Didn't work out. Had some offers, things like that, some looks. Came back, and then that's when I heard about Mitchell, and Kingston was going to be the new coach, and he reached out to me, had me come out for a visit. I checked it out, and he was, talking about how he was going to bring in a lot of guys to, change the atmosphere in that school. And so I was like, I'm on board, and I loved his energy and like, what he brought to the table and how he was talking about, all the scouts he was going to get and, all the connections he had where he wanted to kind of build a program at Division 3 that was going to basically be a D1 powerhouse,
Yeah.
without the D1 title. So then I ended up obviously going to Mitchell, and that's where we met.
Yeah. So what's going on in your mind, right? From high school. You just shared you had a lot of frustrations with coaches, with things not working out the way uh, it you wanted it to, if you will. What's going on in your mind through those years? What are some of the things that you were coming up against that you said, hey, I gotta move on to this next one, and when you look back, what kind of lessons you learned?
So honestly, like what was going on in my mind is because for me, my ultimate goal was to play pro. And then I had my brother, where I'm kind of watching his journey, which was a lot smoother. He was drafted out of high school. We went to the same high school. He was drafted out of high school, went to JUCO for a year as a draft and follow, and then started his, pro career. And he's going through the minors at this time, so I'm kind of like, I want to do the same thing. So I'm hitting all these bumps in the roads with schools and with scouts and all this, all that stuff. And it just made it a little bit more difficult for me. I was, at times in my mind, I'm like, maybe it's not for me. Maybe my brother's just the one who's going to make
Yeah.
it. Maybe I'm meant to do something else. But ultimately, like I always had that competitor mentality. So I'm like, nah, I'm going to do whatever it takes. Like I'll go anywhere I'll go wherever I have to go. I went out to DR, twice, living out there on my own, as a young kid, pretty much, traveling all over, like going to different schools, different states. And at the end of the day, like it was just, I wasn't going to give up, not that easily, at least. So the biggest thing was like that battle of like, am I wasting my time or
Mm.
not? And I never really set my mind on doing anything else at the time. It was really like, this is my goal. Like ultimately, I just want to get in. It doesn't work out then that's fine. But I wanted to be able to get the opportunity to play pro ball. And that
One
was that
thing,
was my main mindset.
one thing I do remember, and I think out of anyone that I played with, I did 4 years, obviously at Mitchell College in New London. One thing I remember about you, you're probably one of the hardest working people I've ever met, on and off the field.
I appreciate that.
Whether it was your catcher's drills behind the plate, the swinging the bat, making sure that you know you're hitting the ball hard. Even just kind of fooling around, you would toy around in different positions, and you would take it really serious, like whether it
Yeah.
be a shortstop or in the outfield, like you took the game very seriously. I was very thankful. Looking back, I, I had some animosity towards Kingston,
Mhm.
in the sense of how like how he handled me as a senior, someone who's been there for so long, and played every single day up until he came, where he just moved me kind of just to the pitching role. Um, but I think one thing that Kingston brought to the program was he wasn't there to play any favorites. I used to think that then, but I think that he was really challenging people to his players. And there was only 17 of us, so it wasn't a lot of us there, right?
No, no,
But
not at all.
he
Yeah.
would challenge us. Like it was a mental challenge in pushing, and he wanted to see who was going to go in and day out, and bring it, show up to practice early, show up to the 5 a.m.s and then the 2 a days really early. Who's going to be in the gym after practice? Who's studying? Who's doing their work? And it was something that I think he was trying to figure out, who are his players to be there, and really going to commit to the process more
Mhm.
so than just feeling like, oh, this kid thinks he's talented, he deserves to be on the field. And I think that's why you and him did really well together, because
Yeah.
you showed him that, listen, I'm here to work, I'm here to take it to the next level, and whatever I have to do. And man, listen, I look back, and as I'm 34, year 34 too,
Mhm.
looking back, that's boneheaded me, but I think that's why you were able to take it to the next level, from where you were at Mitchell, and then over the College of Central Florida, right, the
Yep.
JUCO that you went to afterwards, and
Afterwards, yeah.
obviously into the pros. What do you when you think about that team, the 2011, we won the championship that year. That was a ride. We
That
had
was an awesome year.
such an awesome year. What do you remember most about that team and what we brought to the table?
Honestly, just like you spoke about with Kingston, that was one thing that I loved about the team because we came in and I feel like we had a good mix of players and like guys who had all dealt with some sort of adversity, and we all came in with like a chip on our shoulder. We all had a a goal. I think at least like in the beginning, it seemed like everybody kind of had their own personal goals.
Mm.
Like for me coming in, I was like, hey, I remember talking to Kingston when he first brought me on for the visit, and I'm like, he was asking me like what was my plans, and I'm like, hey, listen, I'm trying to go pro. Like at the end of the day, I don't care if it's D1, D3, I don't care where I'm at. Like that's my goal. So I'm trying to get exposure. I'm trying to have a good year, and go the professional route. And I think a lot of the other guys coming in had the same mindset. Um, but then like as we started to come together, and then Kingston obviously with like the morning workouts and his routine and the way that he handled everything in the weight room and on the field and off the field, it kind of started to bring everybody together. So it was pretty cool because to see like guys coming in with their own personal goals in mind, and at the end of the year, it ended up changing and becoming more about a team. And then we did everything together. Um, and that goal changed from like the personal goals to becoming like all about the team, and like, hey, we're here,
100%.
let's win, and let's win as much as
Absolutely.
we can. And we did, like we did some pretty cool things that year, that I'm pretty sure a lot of people didn't expect. And from what I've heard, at least, that it kind of changed the program. Like that
Yeah,
program has
yeah,
been
that
pretty
program's
solid like ever
awesome.
since.
That
Yeah,
program's awesome. My memory, and to that point of how we all had an individual goals that we didn't really share. Like it was just kind of, it was when we first started getting going, when we went to Florida, there was a lot of individuality in
Hmm.
the team, right? Which is, it's an individual sport in the sense that you contribute individually and then as a team collectively. But my most vivid memory is when, outside of winning the championship, was when we broke curfew,
Yeah.
and he had us at, like, was it at least midnight to 2 in the morning or so,
Just running.
running in that facility. And I remember myself and Gus, we got into a little bickerment back, and it got pretty heated because
Yeah.
we were frustrated that we were, up at 2 in the morning running. And but I think it was in that moment when we kind of clicked
Yeah.
as a team, in that,
Hmm.
because at that point we steamrolled the division. We played really well. I think we were like 24-7, something like that.
Yeah. We killed it.
Something like that. And I think couple of those losses came in Florida, so that's when I think that we got together. But now let's talk. Your transition. So that year was good. We win. We go in and lose in the regional, NCAA regional, I
Yeah.
believe. We
In the
lost.
regionals. Yeah.
We got smoked. And that was it. That was kind of the last of it. I was done. You obviously had several more years to play, but those players, yourself, obviously the seniors that were on the team, the guys who were expected to come back, didn't, including Kingston.
Yep.
And you go off to the JUCO in Florida, and you're catching, and you have what it seemed like a pretty good year there as well. And I remember getting a call. I think it was September or October of 2012 from you, and you were like, "Bro, I just got a call from the White Sox. They're signing me," and I'm like, "Yo, I've got chills when that happened." What was that transition? Because did you take a leap from Mitchell to playing in Florida, and then getting that call because you got signed as a pitcher, right? Not as a catcher, correct?
So originally, so I went to Florida, um, and initially, like the plan was for me to be the starting guy. They already had a catcher. They had a sophomore catcher who had been there the year before, who was a solid overall catcher. Great defensive guy. The bat was, decent, pretty good hitter. He had a decent year the year before hitting. But when they brought me on, um, they were like, "Hey, like we're bringing you on to be the guy, but we have a guy right now who was here last year, and he did a great job with the staff. So you're still gonna kind of have to earn it." And he was a pretty solid catcher, but they basically told me like, "Hey, like you're still gonna have to earn this spot." Um, because when they saw me, they knew that I was a really good defensive catcher, and obviously the way I threw the ball down to second, it kind of stood out. So the coach at the time, um, he used to love to show me off when it came to pop times throwing it down to second base,
Yeah.
and I got a lot of attention. I got a lot of attention because of that.
What was
So
the
the
pop
scouts
time?
would at there. I want to say my best time there was like high 1.7s, like a 1.79 or a one
That's
like low
crazy.
1.8s.
That's
But I used to
crazy.
pretty much sit around like whenever we had our workouts or showcases, things like that. I was always like in the low 1.8s.
Yeah.
So he would have me throw down a lot for the scouts and stuff. So they were really attracted to my arm. But anyway, like during the year, we basically split time, me and the other catcher. We split time. So it was like I would catch a game, he'd catch a game. So that was the first time I kind of had dealt with that
Mm.
in terms of being a hitter and not playing all the time. So it did throw me off a little bit. So I didn't hit the way I wanted to hit. But at the end of the day, whenever I spoke to the scouts, I remember the biggest two teams that were on me that year was the Angels and the White Sox. So whenever I spoke to the White Sox scout, or actually both of the scouts, they both had the same idea. They asked me what I thought about pitching. And I told both of them, I said, listen, at the end of the day, like I set out a goal and it was to play professional. I'm like, I want to put on a uniform. I don't care where I'm at. Like at the end of the day, I'm going to do whatever I got to do to be good at that position. So I said, listen, that's up to you guys. Like I'll go as a pitcher. I don't care. So they were kind of like, all right, we just wanted to like, see what you were thinking about it. Because if it came to the draft, depending on what happened in the draft, you could go as a pitcher or a catcher. So I said, that's fine. So anyway, I didn't have the year that I wanted to hitting. I did all right. But I did struggle a little bit with like not playing every day. So the draft ended up going by. I didn't get drafted originally, which I was hoping to. But then a few weeks later, I want to say it was just a few weeks after the draft was when I got the call from my scout. And he asked me if I was still willing, if I still wanted to, that they had they had a spot for me. And initially I wasn't told exactly, I guess because they already had it in their mind, like he's going to sign, whether it's as a catcher or a pitcher. But it was when I actually first went out to rookie ball, when I went to sign my contract, that I realized that I was being converted to a pitcher. So that's kind of where the whole pitching thing came into it.
When you get that call, what's the emotions going on? Like, how'd you feel? Who'd you tell? Obviously, you called me, which I'm very appreciative that you called me, by the way. But like, what's going on in your mind, and how you feeling when you get that call?
So obviously, it's a moment like I'd never forget. Like I know every single detail about like when I got the call. I knew exactly what I was doing. I remember exactly what I was eating. I was at home. I got the call. I had just picked up some food. I was sitting down in my living room. I was about to watch a baseball game. And then I got the call, and, he asked me if I was still, interested, and that they had a spot open, if I wanted it, that was mine. So I was like, absolutely, like I'm in. I was like, so then obviously got into the details about, what was the next steps. And I just remember like being dry mouth. Like I had so much, like I'm walking around, pacing around my living room, and while I'm on the phone, and then finally, after I got off the call, I remember sitting there for a second and just kind of like trying to take it in, and like it didn't feel real. I had like no appetite. I had my food sitting there. I'm like, I can't even eat this. And I think my father was home, so he was the first person I told. I went up and let him know, that I just got called and I had just got signed. And then afterwards, I remember going down to seeing one of my friends that was local to me. I went down to his house, told him, called my mom, let everybody else know. And then that's when I started making phone calls to like, my teammates, you guys. But yeah, it was a moment that I would never forget. It was awesome.
That's so dope, man. I know a lot of guys who played. I don't think any of them as close you and I were at that time. Obviously, I know Rajay Davis, who I had on my show, but guys like Matt Harvey, Jesse Hahn, those are guys who I know. But just even that experience of you getting in and calling me, I'm like, yo, I'm so hyped, man. I was so hyped for you, bro. But let's talk about the transition and being a catcher going now to the minor leagues, rookie ball, and becoming a pitcher, and what skills you needed to develop, and what was the hardest thing during that process. 'Cause I think in that video you shared the other day, you had a high ERA when you first kind of got into it, and whatnot. So talk to me about what the challenges were and the development piece that you needed to kind of get your mind right, make sure that you were um, mindsets first in this game is the biggest thing. What you had to do to get that up and running.
So initially, when I was told, when I signed my contract, when I got out there, that I was going to be a pitcher, mind you, I didn't even have a glove. Like in my mind, had I been told, like officially, like, hey, no, you're coming, but you're gonna be on the mound, I would have prepared. But I had all my catcher's gear, had all my bats in my trunk when I drove up.
That's right.
And they told me, and I'm like, oh, but I'm a catcher, and they're like, oh, you're a pitcher now. So I'm like, all right, that's fine. I was like, I just don't have a glove. And I remember one of the older guys who had some time. He was just rehabbing down there. He had an extra glove, and he was like, "Hey, I got you." He's like, "You can use this for now." So I went out, playing catch. It just felt so different. It was like not what I'm used to. I wasn't used to going out with the pitchers and stretching with them and playing catch the way they. So I kind of had to get used to that entire process, like running poles and long tossing, and obviously like even maintaining my arm, because in college I did have a lot of arm issues. I would have bicep pain. So I remember thinking like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to throw every day. And I remember them talking about it like, hey, like, yeah, you play catch every day. Even the day you pitch, the day after you pitch, like you're still going to, there's no like, I'm taking a day off. Like if you took the day off of pitching or playing catch, you were injured basically. That's what they said. It was like,
wow.
So that was the initial, part of getting used to. But then they told me like, hey, we're not going to throw you right into it. Like you're going to have, you're gonna have to like warm up to it, and we'll throw some bullpens, and you'll get some live batting practices just to kind of get used to it. And then once you're ready, then we'll get you out there. So the first like half of the season, which was a short season already, I didn't pitch, but I remember throwing my bullpens, and I always wanted feedback because I'm like, hey, I'm pitching now. Like, I know I'm not going to be great, but I want to get better as quick as possible. And I remember asking for feedback from my pitching coach. And for the most part, like the guy I had, he was, a great coach, just really old school. It wasn't the way things are now, like super analytical and like where they dive deep into the mechanics. It was pretty much more like mentality based stuff, like, having a plan and that kind of stuff, but nothing mechanical. And I remember asking him one day, like, hey, like, what do I need to work on after watching like my first bullpen? He's like, he showed me video, and he's like, you look pretty good. The mechanics are pretty solid. Like, I think you're fine. And, I walked out. I remember walking out of the office like, yeah, I don't like that. Like, I know I'm not. There's no way. Like, I was not a pitcher. I pitched in high school, like very little, but I'm like, I'm not a pitcher. And I'm going out to compete against the best, like, professional hitters. So I took it upon myself to kind of just like watch other pitchers in the bullpen when they threw, some of the guys who had more experience or some of the guys that I thought were, some of the better pitchers. And this is where like you spoke about like that, having a mentality of like wanting to be good at anything that I'm doing. I remember I'd go out on the mound during the games. Like we'd be in the middle of a game and I'm on the bullpen mound, like working on mechanics, like just doing some dry throws.
Right.
And I got called out for it. I remember after like one of the games, we had our farm director there, and he's watching me. You can see me, he's sitting in the stands watching the game, and they could see me. And I was up every inning, like on the mound, just trying to get better. And I remember they called me into the office the next day, and they loved it. They were like, oh, this is great. They're like, we can tell you want to get better, but you got to sit down during the games. Like you're in the bullpen, like sit down, watch the game. I finally had some experience throwing some bullpens, throwing some live batting practices to my guys, which I did pretty well. I didn't really have too many issues throwing against them, but I still felt like I didn't know exactly what I was doing.
Yeah.
Until I got my first outing. When I finally got that first call where it was like, hey, you're in. This is another moment that I will never forget. But I go in, and I remember it was a left-handed hitter. I want to say it was like bottom of the order. Like I didn't look too much into it about who he was and where he came from. I was just like, obviously he's a professional hitter. But in my mind, I'm like, hey, I don't want to go out and I don't want to throw my first pitch and it be a ball, or like look terrible in front of fans. I was like, so in my mind, I'm like, hey, just throw a fastball, just throw it over the plate. Hopefully he's most likely not going to swing. And I throw a fastball pretty much right down the middle. I don't remember the speed, but it was probably somewhere in like the mid 80s, and the guy hits it over the fence. So my first professional pitch was a home run. And I remember thinking like right away, like I'm not a pitcher. Like I kind of got upset because, I'm watching this guy run around the bases, and I'm like, all right, but I'm not a pitcher. Like, and it kind of started to get to my head a little bit. And I was like, it was kind of like, I was thinking like, oh, like this is not for me. But then I kind of like, after I got the next ball, I'm like, all right, it is what it is. Like, just move on. Let's go on to the next hitter. And I kind of just like, I don't remember his name exactly. Yeah, I don't remember who the guy was. I wish I could go back and see.
I thought you were about to say somebody that's like in the league right now.
No, I did face some guys that year, but like that same year, I remember facing Buxton. That was Buxton's rookie year. Yeah, I remember him facing. He had a double off me. But yeah, so I remember thinking like, all right, just compete. Like, I'm here already. Like nobody's going to save me. So I remember going in, I think I broke like the next two guys' bats. Like I ended up just saying like, I'm going to just throw fastballs in. I got like 2 broken bats and a pop up, I guess. So I got the 3 quick outs afterwards. And I was like, all right, I could do this. Like, I'll just keep working at it. But yeah, definitely like a big transition, like that first year.
Yeah. How often do they do that with players where they, like you're going in there as a catcher and then they're like, oh no, you're pitching, or vice versa? I don't know. Like, I mean, I see it all the time. Like, I think it's one of the relievers on the Yankees, either Santana. I think Santana. He was a shortstop.
Yeah.
Is that something that they do often with like
You
they have
see it.
guys
You
there for
see it
different
more
things?
often. You see it more often now. I think now they're kind of they're open to it a lot faster, as opposed to like at least when I was playing, they would give guys a decent amount of time. Like you had a good 5-6 years before they started to talk about transitioning. And I saw with you typically it's like catchers or shortstops usually.
Mm.
But you'll see some other guys do it as well, just other outfielders, things like that. But usually like you got your chance to hit, and if you didn't perform after a while, and they didn't think you were going to to progress anymore, but they knew that your arm was an asset, they would take
Mm.
advantage of it. They would kind of like make sure that they got everything out of you before it was like, hey, we're going to release this guy.
So you have your kind of, I want to say, rocky, first half a year, whatever it was. It's like you went to rookie ball, so the season you came in later in that year,
Yeah.
and then you start you work and you getting better, and you posted that you went 3-0 1 year and you had an ERA of 1.59, right? Is
Yep.
that okay? What switched for you? How were you able to make that switch to that 1.59 ERA is good.
Yeah.
3-0 is good.
Yeah.
What was that switch for you?
So going into my spring training the next season, I still wasn't performing too well. Like obviously that first season I didn't do too well. Going into spring training, I wasn't performing the way they wanted to. And being that I was a free agent, like time was of the essence. Like typically, like if you're struggling, like there's no hesitation for an organization to release you like within a year. And this is funny because this is actually something that I found out when I became a coach down the road. That after my first season, when I came back for spring training and I was kind of struggling, I was actually like days away from being released, like before even getting my
Oh,
second
really?
season in.
Wow.
Yeah. So one of the issues I had was um, mechanically, I wasn't, like my body wasn't in a good position for me to throw enough strikes or to command a zone the way they wanted to. So what we did was we had an arm slot change. So I went from basically being like over the top, like high 3/4 guy, and they just wanted to drop me down to a low 3/4, just to kind of like even me out so I could be more squared away and just throw a little bit more strikes. And when they first asked me to do it, I threw a bullpen, and I could tell that I couldn't throw the ball as hard. Not that I was throwing that hard to begin with, because my velocity didn't transition initially from like behind the plate to the mound, and I think part of that was just my body. Like I didn't know how to properly use my body. I didn't know the proper mechanics at the time. So when I did the arm slot change, like my initial bullpen, I remember thinking like, oh, like I can't throw the ball as hard as I would like to, but I was like, I'm not going to give up on it. Like this is what they want me to do. I'm going to figure it out. So I threw it. I threw a few other bullpens here and there. I ended up getting some live BPs in, some scrimmages, things like that. And then it was time for the regular season. So they sent me out to the next level up, which was advanced rookie, basically. So I ended up going out, and I remember still not being fully comfortable with it. But I said, I kind of can't. I don't want to just go back to what I was doing already. I'm going to stick with
So
it.
you trusted it, yeah.
I trusted it, and I knew that I was putting in a lot of work, like, during practices and throwing bullpens. So I said, I'm going to stick with it. My first outing, I remember going out that next year, and I want to say it was the first game of the season. I came in relief, and I ended up going 3 scoreless innings. I remember my velocity wasn't there, but I was getting outs. I had more movement. I was a little bit more deceiving, so I was able to get outs. That was the big part. And then little by little throughout that year, like I started to get more and more comfortable with it. And naturally, my slot ended up going lower than they actually wanted. But it was kind of that. It was like I ended up finding the exact slot that was like my arm was meant to throw at. I had like great movement. My velocity actually started to jump up instead of going down.
Oh, wow.
Like initially it went down because of just trying, something new. But then as I got comfortable with it, my velocity went up like by a few miles per hour, like 3 to 4 miles per hour. My secondary pitches got a lot more effective. So I was getting more strikeouts, more deception, and I ended up being able to throw more innings. And I remember becoming like one of the best pitchers on the team. Like they would come to me to close out games, late inning guy. I actually made a few starts. Like I was kind of like all over the place, but I was having success like anywhere I pitched.
That's awesome, man. It's awesome just to hear the story because even going back to, after high school and into college and going through 2, 3 different 4 programs, going to the Dominican Republic, coming to Mitchell, going to college again after that, there's a level of adaptation that you have that not a lot of people can do. A lot of people would just say, you know what, I'm just gonna go find a job and work somewhere else. You
Yeah.
say, I'm gonna keep pushing, man. That's very admirable to because not a lot of people have that, and I think that's why you had the success that you had. How much of and for those who don't know, I'm going to preface it here. Anthony's brother is Hector Santiago, who pitched for in the major leagues for a decade.
Yeah, about 10
Over,
years or so. Yeah.
yeah, about 10 years. He was on the WBC team, World Baseball Classic team as well for Puerto Rico. How much of his how much of your professional development came from him, his support and in going through what you had to go through?
No, definitely a lot. Actually, like once I got into pro ball, I would actually spend the off seasons in Arizona because at the time he was living in Arizona.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I would spend the off seasons in Arizona with him, and we would get after it, like in terms of like throwing. So like we never really took time off. We never took any time off from throwing. If we weren't playing in like winter ball, we were still in Arizona, like throwing on our own, working on our craft in the gym, getting stronger. So we actually like that year going into my second season was like, the next 2 seasons, but that was like some of the hardest work I put in like in my life. It was like day in, day out, 3, 4 workouts a day, dieting, like proper dieting. Obviously a lot of throwing, long toss and all that stuff. Like we got after, so we went into spring training every year. Like we were ready to go. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of it came down to, him helping me out and like his experience, and him not so much teaching me like the mechanical side of things, but just like, an approach, like how to attack hitters, how he attacks hitters. And, even without that, I watched all his games anyway. I was always watching his games. So like I kind of watched how he attacked hitters and, the mindset he had. And we obviously, we came from the same place. Like I just kind of knew that like it wasn't always about having the best stuff, throwing the hardest. It was more so about like being confident, like being a bulldog on the mound and just attacking guys. And like you're gonna succeed. Like if you have confidence and you have that mindset of attacking hitters and that you're better than them, you're gonna have success. You're gonna get outs.
Yeah, man, that's the name of the game, right? Just have that confidence, attack the strike zone. Obviously, I didn't pitch at the level that you guys pitch, but I was a pitcher, and I get the game and understand how it works. You went on and after a few years of playing professional baseball, you went on and coached, and you were in the same organization that you were signed by, correct? You were in the White Sox organization.
Yep.
What's that like? What's coaching? What's that transition from player to coach? You a young coach, we were 26, 27 when you were coaching?
I was 25 when I started.
25, younger coach. You probably had a lot of big names, if you will, that kind of came through in the organization. What's that like in that transition, being a younger coach and develop or dealing with different personalities and whatnot? How'd you adapt to that?
So yeah, initially like it was definitely different because I never really even had the mindset of becoming a coach.
Yeah.
It was actually the White Sox who reached out to me. They saw something in me like throughout my 3 years playing with them in terms of like work ethic and me kind of helping players when I was a player, helping them along the way. So it was something that they saw in me and they had a position open and they called me and, offered me the position. And at the time, like I said, I still just wanted to play, but I knew it was an opportunity to help others. And in my mind, I'm like, hey, like by being a coach, I'm going to get the opportunity to be around a lot of guys and to be behind the scenes, in terms of professional baseball and kind of see how things work and what they're looking for. And just to become an overall better baseball mind. Mm-hmm. So I took the opportunity, and I remember coming into it like, yeah, at first, initially it was like different because I was around guys that I played with, but now it's like, hey guys, you got to look at me as a coach now. Yeah. Like I'm not a player anymore. But the transition was actually pretty smooth for me. I guess it was kind of like something I was meant to do, because I had no issues with it. Like I jumped right into it and I fit right in, and the players loved me. Like initially I was working with a lot of the younger guys, the guys from Dominican Republic and, things like that. And they all they would always come to me for advice, or they looked to me to kind of like help them out, whether it was on or off the field. So it was an easy transition, but I mean, it was great because I would kind of sit back a lot of times and just watch other coaches or listen to them talk, or in our meetings throughout the week, just hear everybody's input. And it started to naturally just kind of help me find my way of coaching. And I just kept going from there.
What would you learn most about that during that time? About the game, about player personalities, about the business. What were the most valuable lessons you learned during that time?
A lot, man. There was so many, but like you said, like about the business side, I realized like how things work. In terms of at least professional ball with higher round picks. Guys who got bigger bonuses compared to free agent signings. Like you'd be surprised, like guys coming in as a free agent, like they don't have much opportunity to shine. It's like, hey, you do it now or you're out. And then the other guys who are, obviously they invested a lot of money in, it's like they're going to get the bulk of the playing time. They're going to get all the opportunities because, they're an investment. So they kind of have to see that through. So seeing that initially and then realizing like, hey, like I could have been out after my first year because I wasn't a big investment. I was a free agent sign, and they told me like, hey, you were just a few days away from, being released before you made the adjustment. And then, that obviously gave me a few more years. So seeing that was pretty cool to know, like, oh, wow, like, when you're a free agent guy or you're coming in and you're a later round draft pick, there's no wasting time. Like you have to get after it. You gotta, you have to have success right away if you really want to make it. But what was cool for me was like to see the difference between the work ethic, really, between guys who were a big investment, higher round draft picks, and the guys who were free agent signings for less money. And you could see that initially. Not to say that like all the guys who were high rounds didn't work hard, because there are guys that were first rounders that I saw like work just as hard as anybody else. But the guys who were coming in, especially like from Dominican Republic and Venezuela and all that, like guys who were signed for 1,000, 50,000, 25,000, 10,000, they put in the work. Like they were grinding. Like they knew that they had to work that much harder to keep up with everybody else. And it was awesome to see some of those guys actually make it to the big leagues, compared to other guys, who were first rounders or somewhere in the top 10 rounds, got a lot of money, and we're kind of just going through the motions, because in their minds they're like, yeah, I'm going to make it to the big leagues already.
Sense of entitlement, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just a parallel that I connecting the dots is that you see the work ethic from your perspective, right? Someone who put in all the work to get to where you have the success that you had, and you're able to appreciate those other guys who are getting signed, because you can relate a little bit easier. And not that you wouldn't be able to relate, but I think that what I've learned about just in life is that on the other side of hard work is the result. And when you get to the result, it's just working harder. I remember you and I used to work out. I used to be crazy with the deadlift, bro. Deadlift and the squats. I remember, you add another plate. But it was just that level up. Yeah, I already did this one. Why not, get to this next level? I know we got a few minutes here just to wrap up. I want to just ask you a question about what's the most rewarding aspect about coaching. What do you feel most rewarded with coaching, and then kind of talk about what you do there in Jersey still, right?
Mhm.
Talk about what you do with the player development in New Jersey.
Well, yeah, the most rewarding thing about coaching, honestly, is always going to be like, guys thanking you, or seeing the guys actually listening and paying attention to whether it be like my experience that I had, my journey, like when I share my story with them, and it kind of motivating them to, you know, to want to do more and to try to get themselves to the next level. And just to actually see the progress. Like the good thing now is like, when I was in pro ball and I would come back and train players, like it was cool, because I would immediately come back and be able to share like more knowledge that I had just learned, and help those guys for a few months. But my off seasons were usually pretty short. So I didn't get a chance to spend too much time with the guys. But now that I'm back home, I'm a firefighter now in New Jersey. So I have a good amount of
Family
time.
man.
Family
And a
man.
family. Yeah.
So, I get to spend more time with these players. So now, the guys that I train, I'm able to train throughout the year. So I'm able to actually like see them progress throughout the year and continue working with them all year long. So watching players grow, whether it's like some of my younger guys who are 9, 10 years old, or high school, college guys, and seeing them advance to the next level is always going to be the most rewarding thing for me.
Love that, man. Listen, I got a question, two questions here, and we'll wrap up. What advice do you have for those younger players, getting through high school, maybe have aspirations to make it to the professional league, minors, majors, in college? What advice do you got for these guys that are really trying to break through and make it a bit to the show, if you will?
So I would say one of the biggest things is like, being honest with themselves about what kind of player they are, like what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. Because some guys, and you know how it is, like in college and stuff like that, they're probably pretty good hitters or pretty good pitchers, but in their mind, they're better than they actually are.
Listen,
So
that was me. That
they
was me.
won't.
I thought I was a lot better than I was, bro. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, no, and it happens. It's normal, like you have some success and you just think like, hey, I'm pretty good. Like, and you just keep
Yeah,
doing what you're doing.
right.
You don't change anything. You don't look for, something else that's going to help you get even better. Most guys, like if you ask them like, hey, what's your best pitch or what's your strength? They really won't know what to tell you. Or even worse is if you ask them, hey, what's your weakness? They don't really know. It's like, so kind of like realizing what they do good and what they do bad so that they can know, hey, okay, let me focus on getting better at my strengths, but also improving my weaknesses. And then asking for help, honestly. Like a lot of guys will try to do it on their own nowadays, especially with like social media and YouTube and the internet. Like it's so easy to go online and learn from people. But it's not the same as like having somebody there who has watched you like progress throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year, and can tell you things and help you with things that you can't really do yourself, especially if you don't know what you're looking for. A
Yeah,
lot of guys want to watch video, but they don't understand what they're looking at.
right.
So a matter of like getting help from somebody like, who knows what they're doing and can, tell you exactly what it is without you, not being able to take the criticism.
That's
So
uh that's awesome. So I had obviously I had Rajay Davis on, and one of the things that he talked about during his playing career or even just growing up was, if I didn't have anybody to throw with, I was going to go outside and throw the ball against the wall, and he would just do that
mhm.
over and over and over and over again. And then, with batting, same thing. He would just take a thousand swings. I'm having I don't know if you know who Adam Greenberg is, but Adam in 2005 he got hit in the head on his major league debut,
Oh, I think
and
I do remember.
he got hit right below the helmet,
Yeah.
and it kind of derailed his career. It was on the first pitch against the Marlins, and I've been reading his book. I'm about to wrap it up here, and he talks about in the book. He was running in the cold. He was running up hills, doing stairs. He was just doing a level of work that people weren't doing, and he just knew that no matter where no matter what he was going to do, was like, I'm going to make it to the league by putting in this work. And that's, I think that's that separation from what you just, said. This is the advice: if you know what you're good at, know what you're not, but also let's make sure that you're aware of your skill level too. Anthony, what's the future of baseball like for you, man? What do you got? What do you hope to do? I know you're career man, firefighter. Do you have any aspirations to kind of get back into it, over the next few years, or is this something that you have passion in what you're doing locally?
So honestly, I mean, when I started my coaching career, playing career, I always wanted to give back, especially to my community, like where I come from, because I know there's other players like myself who have talent, but that don't necessarily have the ways of getting exposure or getting into a good school, especially trying to get to go the professional route. So my mindset was always like trying to find a way to give back as much as possible, which is why I always kept up with the coaching. So whenever I would come back, I would coach in the off seasons, go away for the season, come back and do the same thing. But now that I have a lot more time, like I'm trying to expand as much as possible to go into as many different routes as possible that I can help as many players as possible. So I've always done like the in-person training, private lessons, but now I'm expanding into remote training online for pitchers, and I think that's a good opportunity because aside from just having that in-person session with a guy, it's great to be able to keep up with the players throughout the week because there's only so much you could get out of one session. So I want to find different ways to be able to help guys all week long because I know it's not a one day thing. You're not going to be able to play catch or throw a bullpen one day a week and get better. And I know that from personal experience. Like I had to work 3 times as hard as everybody else in pro ball just to be able to keep up because I was so far behind when it came to pitching. So I know what it takes. So I want to try to give these guys as much opportunity, as much of my time as possible, where I can keep up with them throughout the week, with their progress, in-person stuff, here and there, and obviously, online calls. But yeah, I'm getting into the remote training now, as well as my in-person training. And I am planning on starting to do more actual camps, for younger guys, older guys, just expanding as much as I can just to help give back. Like I want to make sure that I'm reaching out to as many players as possible.
I love that, man. Listen, we talked about your, college career, early baseball, through high school, through college, going into the minors. Talked about your playing time in the minors, and then we wrapped up here a little bit about your coaching. Other than that, man, where can people find you? Where can in the description, where can I direct people to find you and your trainings and whatnot?
Yeah. So my Instagram handle is Santiago Soldiers. And that's where I post a lot of my baseball content, and that's where I basically connect with players and help, whether it's, just free information that I'm posting on my page, or that's where players can just reach out to me just to talk, or if they want to, obviously to be able to connect to do either in person or remote training.
Dope, man. I really appreciate it, bro. It's good catching up. Looking forward to staying connected and seeing what you continue to do, man. I'm proud of everything that you've accomplished. So keep working hard, keep giving back, and we'll get you on again at some time down the road.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me, bro.